Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more pattern testing out here today. And we've got another pretty interesting little setup to test out today. A shell that I've used for a good while now, but I've never actually tested it on a piece of paper or a target like this to see how it actually does. So I'm really curious to see how this shell performs. And those loads are some of these ones. These are the Herter's 410 3-inch 7.5 shot of lead. It's 11/16 ounce of payload going 1135 feet per second. I do have the chronograph, so we will be able to see how accurate that velocity actually is as well. And I've used those for a couple years now for my small game stuff. A little bit of rabbit, a little bit of squirrel, a little bit of dove, that kind of things out of a different 410 that I have. But as for today, the setup we're going to be testing it in is the usual Mossberg 500 410 turkey here. I did decide to go with the Winchester 391 constriction full choke that I have for the gun. But as per usual, how we do these pattern tests, I've got 3 targets set up, one at 20 yards, one at 30 yards, and one at 40 yards. I'm going to shoot 1 shot at each target, running each shot across the chronograph so you guys can get the actual velocities that we're getting. And then I'll go down and draw different size circles on the targets, as well as mark all of our pellets and count them up. So that way we can get pattern density and pellet counts within certain size circles. So let's go over here and get you guys set up on the chronograph. We'll take our 3 shots. I'll mark everything on our papers, and then we'll go take a look and see how they perform at those different yardages that we have set up. Alright, so those rounds seem relatively consistent across the chronograph. No huge jumps, I don't believe. As far as what we got, we had a high of 1254, we had a low of 1239, and we had an average of 1245 feet per second. So maybe on the slightly upper end of average for speed goes for just a normal 7.5 lead hunting style load like that. Nothing super special to see though, but it is pretty consistent. So let's go to our targets and see how they did down there. Alright, so here's our 20-yard target, and as you can see, everything is pretty condensed here, but overall relatively even. It's not super tight, but it's not blown wide open either. In our center 10-inch circle here, there's 130 pellets in there. And since this is only 20 yards, I draw a 20-inch circle, and there's 96 pellets within that circle. We do have a few just outside around the edge up there, and 1 or 2 or 3 down here along this side. But overall, I don't think that's a terrible start for 20 yards. That'll absolutely do anything small game related you could ever ask for at 20 yards for sure. So now let's go over and look at our 30-yard paper. Alright, now we're looking at our 30-yard paper here, and as you can see, we definitely opened up quite a bit, but all in all, I definitely think it's pretty even, all things considered here. In our center 10-inch circle, we have 41 pellets, but there's really no voids or anything in there. I mean, there is, but relative to the rest of it, it's very even. And as we back out to our now 30-inch circle, there's 124 pellets within that circle. And once again, for the most part, we see a very even spread of pellets here. There are some areas all the way out here on the edges that are a little bit more open for voids, but nothing major. But if you line your shot up right, going after a rabbit or a squirrel or anything like that, or lead your shot just right on a dove or anything like that, they're not going to make it through that. So it's definitely a little bit more open, but nothing that I think anything small game related is going to make it through. So we're still looking pretty decent in my opinion. So now let's move over and look at our 40-yard paper. Okay, and here's our 40-yard paper, and we definitely opened up quite a bit here. Now I think some of it is just to do with the load and it being a 410, but I have suspicions of something else, which we'll take a look at here in just a minute. But as we move in here in our center 10-inch circle, there's 13 pellets in there and a big void right there in the middle that something could absolutely sneak through. But as we back out, we have 87 pellets in our 30-inch circle, and there are definitely some larger voids and gaps showing up here in this larger 30-inch circle as well. That something could absolutely sneak through for sure. But I still think you could get away with this for something like a rabbit. A squirrel, you're starting to push your luck a little bit because there's some gaps and holes that they can definitely sneak through. And as for doves or anything like that, you could use it, but I don't think it's the best idea. I think there's better options out there, I guess you could say. But either way, I did find something interesting with this particular shot. So let's go take a look at our wads and see what I found. Okay, so here's the wads out of these shells. And right off the bat, typical target style wad, nothing really too special or fancy to see about them. But this one did peel this one petal open pretty weirdly here. The other two sides went just fine, but there's no really holes or tears or anything like that other than right up here at the very edge where the pieces of the wad were probably molded together a little bit, but nothing too special. And this is consistent with our second wad as well. They did pretty much the exact same thing. So these two, the 20 and the 30 yard wad, look for all intents and purposes the exact same. But the same cannot be said for our final 40 yard shot wad here. As you can see, we have one petal that's folded completely around and underneath of the wad. But my main concern is look at the amount of shot that's crammed down in the bottom of that wad. That's probably 15 or 20 pellets worth jammed down in the bottom of that wad there. Now that may not sound like a lot of shot, but when you're talking 40 yards, you need all the extra pellets you can get. And that right there is not at all ideal. So something really, really strange. I don't really understand why unless it would have caught on something. But everything is just fine as far as my gun and my choke goes. I definitely think that probably hurt our 40 yard pattern a bit. But that's definitely something pretty strange to see here. Alright, well y'all, what did you think about how these performed? I definitely think that they did good for our 20 and our 30 yard pattern, but I definitely think that really strange wad performance had something to do with our 40 yard pattern. Our 40 yard pattern wasn't terrible, but it definitely was not great either compared to some of the other things we've tested. So what do you guys think? What do you think happened with that wad to where it would do that? But all in all, I don't think these are a terrible option. They're cheap enough compared to other 410 loads, and relatively easy to find compared to a lot of other 410 loads. So I think they would be just fine for your small game stuff. But on that note, it is hot out here and it's starting to cloud up for a storm this afternoon, and I've still got another test I need to run. So I'm gonna jump back to it. Let me know your thoughts about it all, and I'll see y'all in the next one.